Neediness is a deep emotional state that often goes unnoticed, but it plays a significant role in shaping our relationships and how we navigate the world. From a philosophical perspective, understanding this neediness can reveal profound insights into our emotional lives. Love, for instance, is often seen as the ultimate source of fulfillment, but it can also bring suffering. It's like a bow, not a knot, an instrument of tension, where both the release and the tension can lead to growth or to more suffering. In fact, love's complexity is what makes it so compelling, yet dangerous if misunderstood. Philosophy teaches us that emotional experiences are more than just personal feelings. They are deeply intertwined with our worldview and the way we see ourselves. Neediness can stem from a lack of self-love or from an unfulfilled desire for affection from others. This is where philosophy's wisdom becomes key. By analyzing the nature of neediness, we see that it's not a random occurrence, but something shaped by our beliefs and values about love, affection, and validation. Love becomes something external that we seek to fill an internal void, and in this process, we often lose sight of our own inner worth. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic philosopher, spoke about our shared human condition when he said, "Men are made for one another." This statement highlights the necessity of emotional exchange, not just as a survival mechanism, but as a way to deepen our humanity. When we seek love, we seek not just to satisfy our individual needs, but to expand our connection with others. However, if we allow this neediness to dominate us, it can lead us into an endless search for affection, sometimes at the expense of our own dignity and well-being. As we explore this concept, it becomes clear that love isn't just about receiving. It's also about how we express and share our feelings. Emotional expression allows us to connect, but if not managed, it can lead to an imbalance where affection is overgiven or undergiven, creating a toxic cycle of neediness. This opens the door to understanding how our emotional world works. It's not just about feeling, but about how we manage our internal and external worlds. Philosophy reminds us that we must not let love control us, but rather use it to build a stronger sense of self. This leads us into the next important topic, how emotional expression forms bonds. As we continue, we'll uncover how our emotional exchanges play a central role in the way we connect with others, and how we can break free from the cycle of neediness. By recognizing the role of emotional expression, we can learn to give and receive love in a way that enhances our relationships, rather than diminishes them. The role of emotional expression and the formation of bonds. Emotional expression is fundamental to human connection, and it is through sharing our emotions that we form meaningful relationships. When we express ourselves, we reveal pieces of our inner world, allowing others to see us for who we truly are. This is a necessary process, as it creates the bonds that make us feel understood and supported. Yet, the way we express emotions can determine whether these bonds strengthen or weaken. Overexpression, underexpression, or misexpression can create misunderstandings, leading to disconnection rather than connection. The importance, then, lies not only in the act of expressing emotions, but in how we manage that expression. The idea that men are made for one another, expressed by Marcus Aurelius, echoes this concept of shared emotional experience. It highlights that human beings are inherently social, and emotional exchanges are essential for our survival and flourishing. It suggests that love, care, and affection are not luxuries but necessities for our psychological and emotional well-being. When we fail to express our emotions, or when we suppress them, we deny ourselves the very connections that make life meaningful. The act of sharing our feelings, whether joy, sorrow, or even frustration, is what binds us together as a community. The problem arises when emotional expression becomes distorted. In many cases, people either fail to communicate their feelings or become overly dependent on others to express emotions for them. This leads to a cycle of emotional neediness, where the individual relies on external validation to confirm their worth. A healthy expression of emotions, on the other hand, requires a balance, a space where emotions are shared freely, but without the expectation that others must carry the burden of fulfilling our emotional needs. Philosophy teaches us that our relationships should not be driven by the quest for emotional fulfillment, but by a genuine desire to share and understand one another. Love, as an expression of emotional need, becomes problematic when it is not balanced with self-awareness and mutual respect. True emotional connection can only flourish when both parties feel seen and heard. When emotional expression is authentic and grounded in self-awareness, bonds become stronger, more resilient, and more fulfilling. In understanding how emotional expression forms bonds, we begin to see the importance of being both a giver and a receiver of emotional energy. Moving forward, we will explore the triad of love, will, and intelligence, which shows us how these elements work together to build healthier emotional expressions and stronger, more balanced relationships. The triad: love, will, and intelligence. The triad of love, will, and intelligence forms the foundation of balanced emotional expression and effective relationships. These three elements must work in harmony to create a healthy emotional environment. Love alone, without the guidance of will and intelligence, can lead to irrational behavior, overwhelming attachment, and emotional chaos. Will provides the strength to act upon love, while intelligence ensures that our actions are thoughtful, measured, and aligned with our highest good. Together, these elements form a dynamic force that drives meaningful emotional connections. Will is the driving force that gives love direction. It transforms love from a passive feeling into an active force, motivating us to express our affection in ways that benefit both ourselves and others. Without will, love can become stagnant or self-centered, focused solely on personal need rather than mutual growth. It is will that pushes us to take the necessary actions to nurture relationships, even when it requires effort, discipline, or sacrifice. This is why strong willpower is a critical aspect of emotional health. It ensures that love does not become a mere fleeting sentiment, but a lasting and constructive force in our lives. Intelligence, on the other hand, brings wisdom and discernment to our emotional expressions. It allows us to navigate the complexities of love with clarity, to recognize when our feelings are clouded by projections or distorted desires, and to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Intelligence helps us understand that love is not only about what we feel, but also about what is appropriate and beneficial in each situation. It teaches us to balance our emotions with rationality, ensuring that our emotional expressions are grounded in a deeper understanding of ourselves and others. When either will or intelligence deteriorates, the consequences can be profound. Love can become a source of illusions or fantasies, leading us to chase unattainable ideals or to become trapped in unhealthy relationship dynamics. Without will, we may lack the motivation to sustain love, and without intelligence, we may be unable to see the truth of our emotions. This imbalance often results in captivity within relationships, where we are either too dependent or too detached, unable to fully engage with love in a healthy and fulfilling way. In the next section, we will explore the errors that often lie at the root of neediness, focusing on how the lack of self-love and overinvestment in others can distort the balance of love, will, and intelligence, leading to unhealthy emotional dependency. Errors at the root of neediness. At the core of neediness often lies a profound difficulty with self-love and self-valuation. Many individuals find it challenging to truly appreciate themselves, and instead, they look outward for validation and affection. This error in self-perception creates a void that emotional dependence seeks to fill. People may believe that love from others is the only source of worth, when in reality, it is self-love that must come first. Without this foundational self-respect, any external affection becomes a fragile, fleeting solution rather than a genuine fulfillment. One of the most common errors is the overconcentration of affection onto a single person. When someone places all their emotional energy into one relationship, they risk losing their sense of individuality and personal boundaries. This is a dangerous territory because it fosters dependency and can lead to feelings of frustration or abandonment when that affection is not reciprocated as expected. The need to be loved in such an intense way becomes more about securing one's emotional survival than about nurturing a healthy bond. This is where we see a dangerous cycle of emotional neediness begin. When one person's affection becomes the primary source of another's emotional sustenance. Another critical error in this dynamic is the phenomenon of disproportionate emotional investment. This occurs when an individual invests far more emotional energy into a relationship than is healthy or appropriate. It may manifest as giving excessively or expecting the other person to fulfill needs that should be addressed within oneself. This imbalance creates emotional dependency, where the individual feels incomplete without constant affirmation or attention. This type of neediness can lead to unhealthy relational patterns, as the person becomes consumed with maintaining the relationship rather than engaging in personal growth or self-care. These errors are rooted in distorted beliefs about love and relationships. Society often reinforces the idea that love is something that must be earned or validated by others, which sets the stage for individuals to look outside themselves for approval. The key to breaking this cycle is recognizing that love, at its core, is an internal process, not a transactional one. It is about valuing oneself enough to know that emotional fulfillment is not reliant on others' actions, but on one's own sense of worth and self-acceptance. In the next section, we will delve deeper into the lack of inner life and the dangers of relying too heavily on external validation, which often exacerbates the cycle of neediness and prevents individuals from developing true emotional independence. Lack of inner life and external validation. The reliance on external validation is one of the most insidious drivers of neediness. When individuals seek constant approval from others, they fail to cultivate a strong inner life. This inner life, shaped by introspection, self-awareness, and personal growth, becomes the foundation for emotional stability. Without it, individuals are left adrift, relying on others' opinions to feel valued or loved. It is only when we learn to validate ourselves from within that we can break free from the cycle of external dependence and find lasting emotional fulfillment. History is full of examples of misunderstood artists and thinkers who faced rejection or lack of recognition in their time, yet their works became timeless treasures. This shows the danger of measuring one's worth based on the validation of others. Figures like Vincent van Gogh or Emily Dickinson didn't find widespread approval during their lifetimes, but their inner conviction and dedication to their craft allowed them to persevere. In a world obsessed with external recognition, these individuals teach us that true validation must come from within. Their lives highlight the importance of nurturing an inner life that remains unaffected by the shifting tides of social approval. The danger of relying too heavily on others' opinions is that it robs individuals of their sense of autonomy. External validation can create a dependency where one's emotional state is contingent upon how others perceive them. This leaves little room for personal growth or the development of emotional resilience. Individuals trapped in this cycle may feel emotionally depleted, as they are constantly seeking reassurance or affirmation from outside sources. Over time, this can lead to feelings of emptiness, depression, or a deep sense of inadequacy. The solution is to focus on cultivating an inner life rich in self-reflection, self-love, and emotional independence. Moreover, excessive reliance on external validation often creates a false sense of self-worth. People may become trapped in a web of fantasy and illusions about their own value, constantly measuring themselves against other standards. This type of emotional dependency leads to dissatisfaction, as the individual is never truly at peace with themselves. It also opens the door to manipulative behavior, where one might go to great lengths to seek approval from others, even at the expense of their own well-being. As we continue, we will explore the absence of meaning and idealism, focusing on how a lack of purpose in life can fuel neediness and lead to further emotional turmoil. When we lack a deeper sense of meaning, we become vulnerable to external validation and the emotional highs and lows that come with it. Absence of meaning and idealism. A life without a clear sense of purpose or direction can be a breeding ground for neediness. When individuals lack a life goal or blueprint, they often struggle to find fulfillment, relying instead on external sources of validation to fill the void. Meaning and idealism provide the internal compass that guides us through life's challenges, helping us maintain a sense of worth and direction. Without them, we are left adrift, searching for external affirmation in relationships or material success, rather than drawing strength from within. The need for motivation derived from ideals, rather than external circumstances, is crucial to overcoming emotional dependency. People who live with a sense of purpose are less likely to be swayed by the opinions of others or to seek validation through unhealthy emotional attachments. When we set our sights on a larger goal or vision, whether it's personal growth, spiritual enlightenment, or a contribution to the greater good, we create a foundation for emotional independence. This gives us the resilience to face the inevitable challenges of life without relying on others to define our worth. Idealism, however, must be rooted in reality to avoid the trap of illusion. If we place our hopes in unattainable ideals or fantasy-based expectations, we risk falling into disappointment and emotional frustration. True idealism is grounded in the recognition of life's challenges and imperfections, but it is driven by a belief in our ability to transcend them. It encourages us to strive for higher purposes, not for the sake of validation, but for the fulfillment that comes from living a life of integrity and meaning. Philosophical teachings emphasize the importance of having a life goal that transcends personal desires. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, argued that the search for meaning is the primary motivation in life. He believed that even in the most dire circumstances, individuals could find a sense of purpose through their attitudes and responses to suffering. His insights reveal that emotional neediness often stems from a lack of meaning, which leads us to seek external validation to fill the emotional gap. Meaning, on the other hand, provides an internal source of strength that does not depend on others' approval. In the next section, we will explore the metaphor of the drowned man's embrace, a powerful image that reflects the desperation of neediness and the emotional vampirization that often accompanies it. This metaphor will help us understand how neediness can manifest in relationships and how it drains both individuals involved. The drowned man's embrace metaphor. The metaphor of the drowned man's embrace perfectly captures the desperate nature of neediness. Imagine a drowning man reaching out for someone to save him, only to drag the rescuer into the depths with him. This image represents the emotional dependency that often characterizes unhealthy relationships. When an individual is consumed by emotional need, they may unknowingly attempt to drown others in their need for validation, attention, or affection. Rather than offering love in a balanced, reciprocal way, they pull others into a cycle of emotional vampirization, where both parties end up exhausted and drained. The drowning person's need for help is real, but their actions create an emotional dynamic that is not sustainable. In relationships marked by neediness, one person may constantly demand attention, reassurance, and affection, while the other becomes their emotional lifeline. Over time, this dynamic leads to burnout, resentment, and an erosion of the bond. The relationship becomes one-sided, with the person in need constantly pulling from the other without giving enough in return. This creates a toxic pattern, where both individuals end up feeling emotionally overwhelmed and unfulfilled. This metaphor also reflects the way in which neediness can distort the natural flow of love and affection. Rather than allowing emotional energy to flow freely between individuals, The needy person attempts to control and direct that flow toward themselves. This creates a sense of emotional suffocation, where the person in need cannot breathe freely or find stability within themselves. They rely on others to save them from their own emotional turmoil, but in doing so, they create an environment of dependency rather than independence. Understanding this metaphor highlights the importance of cultivating emotional independence and self-respect. Just as a drowning man must first learn to float before he can be saved, individuals trapped in neediness must learn to meet their own emotional needs before seeking validation from others. This requires a shift in mindset, recognizing that love, care, and affection must come from within and cannot be solely reliant on others' attention or approval. When we stop looking for others to rescue us, we begin to empower ourselves to build healthier, more balanced relationships. In the next section, we will examine the difference between hierarchical and territorial orientations, two perspectives that shape the way individuals engage with relationships and emotional neediness. Understanding these orientations will help us see how we can move from a place of dependence to one of personal empowerment and self-sufficiency. Hierarchical versus territorial orientation. The difference between hierarchical and territorial orientation plays a crucial role in shaping how we approach relationships and emotional needs. A hierarchical orientation focuses on external validation, constantly comparing oneself to others and seeking approval or recognition. This mindset thrives on competition and social status, with individuals striving to climb the social ladder or gain favor in the eyes of others. Emotional neediness in this context often arises from a lack of internal validation, where individuals base their worth on how others perceive them. The more they climb, the more they need external affirmation, creating a cycle of dependency that can be exhausting and unfulfilling. In contrast, a territorial orientation is grounded in self-mastery and the cultivation of internal resources. Rather than seeking validation from others, individuals with a territorial mindset focus on mastering their craft, developing their emotional intelligence, and nurturing their inner life. This approach is less concerned with external comparisons and more focused on personal growth and contribution. Emotional neediness is less prevalent here because the individual's sense of worth is derived from their own actions, abilities, and personal values. The energy flows inward rather than outward, fostering emotional independence and resilience. Stephen Pressfield's concept from The War of Art illustrates this dynamic beautifully. Pressfield argues that the true artist, or, in broader terms, anyone pursuing personal mastery, does not measure their success by the approval of others, but by their own commitment to their craft. This territorial approach to life encourages individuals to take ownership of their emotional well-being, rather than surrendering it to the whims of external validation. It's about building a strong foundation within, one that is unshaken by the approval or disapproval of others. The tension between hierarchical and territorial orientations is often the source of emotional conflict. Individuals with a hierarchical mindset may feel unfulfilled or frustrated by their constant pursuit of external validation. They might be trapped in a cycle of comparison, jealousy, and competition, feeling that they are never quite enough. On the other hand, those with a territorial orientation are more likely to experience fulfillment as their emotional needs are met internally, and their relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding rather than a constant need for approval. As we continue, we will explore how selfishness can sometimes hide beneath the surface of neediness. This often manifests in the form of emotional dependency, where one person seeks validation from another without offering anything in return. We'll examine how this dynamic contributes to unhealthy relationships and the importance of contributing rather than merely depending on others. Selfishness hidden in neediness. Neediness often disguises itself as a desire for love and connection, but beneath the surface, it can reveal a deeper, less comfortable truth: selfishness. When individuals are consumed by their emotional needs, They may become so focused on what they can get from others that they fail to consider what they can give in return. This one-sided approach to relationships leads to dependency, where one person takes more than they give, leaving the other feeling drained and unfulfilled. The need for validation becomes the primary driver, often at the expense of mutual respect and genuine connection. This type of selfishness is subtle and often goes unnoticed by the individual, who may genuinely believe that their emotional needs are justified. However, when someone constantly seeks emotional fulfillment without offering anything of equal value, they create an imbalance. The relationship becomes transactional, where love and affection are given only in exchange for something in return. This creates a cycle of dependence, where both individuals are trapped in a constant struggle to meet each other's unmet emotional needs, but neither is truly satisfied. The key to overcoming this form of selfishness lies in recognizing the importance of contributing to relationships, not just depending on others for emotional sustenance. True love and connection are built on mutual respect and reciprocity. It's about sharing your emotional energy freely, without the expectation of immediate rewards. By focusing on what we can give, whether it's affection, understanding, or support, we move away from emotional dependency and toward a more balanced and fulfilling relationship dynamic. This shift in mindset requires a deep commitment to personal growth and self-awareness. Individuals must first learn to meet their own emotional needs, which creates a sense of internal fulfillment. Once this inner contentment is established, they can offer love and affection freely, without the fear of depletion or rejection. This allows for a more generous and genuine exchange in relationships, where both parties contribute equally to the emotional well-being of one another. As we continue, we will explore how life worth and generosity can serve as powerful antidotes to neediness. When individuals find meaning in their lives and dedicate themselves to serving others, they move beyond selfishness and toward a more altruistic approach to love and relationships. Life worth and generosity as alternatives. When faced with existential emptiness, individuals are presented with two potential paths: selfishness or altruism. The absence of meaning often drives people to look inward, focusing on their own unmet emotional needs. However, this inward focus can lead to a dangerous cycle of emotional dependency and isolation. In contrast, dedicating oneself to a higher cause or giving to others can transform the emptiness into a sense of purpose. Generosity, in this sense, becomes a remedy for neediness, offering a way to transcend self-centeredness and foster deeper, more meaningful connections with others. Giving one's useless life as a gift to humanity is a powerful antidote to emotional emptiness. When we shift our focus from personal fulfillment to serving others, we not only alleviate our own neediness, but also contribute to the greater good. This kind of generosity doesn't necessarily mean grand gestures or sacrifices. It can be as simple as offering a listening ear, supporting a friend in need, or showing kindness to a stranger. These acts of service remind us that we are part of something larger than ourselves, helping to restore a sense of meaning and value to our lives. Philosophers and spiritual leaders throughout history have emphasized the importance of living for something greater than personal gain. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reminded himself that the purpose of life is to contribute to the community, to be of service to others, and to cultivate virtue. This perspective shifts the focus from what we can get to what we can give. When we embrace this mindset, we begin to see that our emotional fulfillment is not a byproduct of external validation, but of living in alignment with our values and purpose. Generosity, therefore, acts as a bridge between emotional neediness and emotional fulfillment. By giving freely, we not only meet the needs of others, but also nourish our own emotional health. This act of selflessness creates a cycle of positive energy, where both the giver and the receiver benefit. The more we practice generosity, the less we rely on others for validation, and the more we cultivate inner peace and contentment. In the next section, we will explore how emotional phenomena are linked to erroneous ideas and distorted perceptions. Understanding these misconceptions will help us develop greater mental discipline and break free from the cycle of emotional dependency. Emotional phenomena linked to erroneous ideas. Many of the emotional struggles we face stem from distorted perceptions and erroneous beliefs about ourselves, others, and the world around us. Negative emotions, such as frustration, jealousy, and anxiety, often arise from ideas that are not rooted in reality. These erroneous ideas shape how we view our relationships, our worth, and our place in the world. When we hold on to these false beliefs, our emotional responses become exaggerated and out of proportion, leading to unnecessary suffering and confusion. For example, the belief that love must be unconditional and that any form of rejection is a reflection of personal failure can create deep emotional pain. This idea leads to dependency on others for validation, as the individual constantly seeks reassurance and affection to prove their worth. The erroneous belief that love can only be validated through external actions or words traps the individual in a cycle of emotional neediness, where they feel unworthy unless others constantly affirm their value. Philosophy teaches us that our thoughts and beliefs shape our emotional experiences. If we continue to hold on to misconceptions about love, worth, or relationships, we are likely to experience a distorted emotional reality. In order to break free from this cycle, we must develop mental discipline and learn to challenge our thoughts and beliefs. By questioning the accuracy of our perceptions and embracing a more balanced perspective, we can reduce the emotional impact of erroneous ideas and cultivate emotional resilience. This mental discipline is essential for overcoming neediness. When we learn to recognize and correct our faulty thinking, we create space for healthier emotional experiences. Instead of reacting impulsively or emotionally, we can respond thoughtfully and with clarity. This shift in mindset allows us to break free from the need for external validation and to build stronger, more independent emotional foundations. In the next section, we will explore the role of dispersion and how the inability to face our problems directly can contribute to emotional instability. Understanding this dynamic will help us focus our energy and develop the mental stability necessary for emotional independence. Dispersion and inability to face problems. One of the greatest obstacles to emotional stability is the tendency to avoid or distract ourselves from confronting our problems directly. In today's fast-paced world, constant distractions, from technology to social media, often serve as an escape from our internal struggles. We may find ourselves constantly looking for something external to alleviate the discomfort of facing our emotional pain. This dispersion of attention prevents us from developing the mental clarity and emotional resilience needed to resolve our issues. By avoiding the problems that lie at the core of our emotional turmoil, we only prolong our suffering and create new layers of frustration. The inability to face problems head-on often stems from a fear of vulnerability. We may fear that confronting our issues will reveal weaknesses or flaws that we are not ready to acknowledge. However, avoiding problems only reinforces the negative emotions tied to them. The longer we put off facing our fears, the more intense the emotional burden becomes. It is only by confronting our problems directly that we can begin to understand them and take the necessary steps to heal. This process requires courage, mental discipline, and a willingness to face discomfort in order to grow. Philosophical teachings, particularly from Stoicism, emphasize the importance of embracing discomfort and difficulty as part of the human experience. Marcus Aurelius famously stated that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This perspective encourages us to see our problems not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth. When we stop running from our emotional challenges, we start to develop the mental clarity necessary for overcoming them. Instead of being swept away by emotions, we can face them with a calm and measured approach. Focused reflection and mental stability are key to addressing the root causes of our emotional distress. Instead of allowing ourselves to be distracted by external sources, we must cultivate the ability to turn inward and reflect on our emotional experiences. This practice allows us to recognize patterns, understand the underlying causes of our emotions, and take proactive steps toward resolving our issues. The more we engage in this introspection, the more we strengthen our emotional resilience and increase our capacity to deal with life's challenges. Dangers of victim identity and weakness culture. In recent years, modern culture has increasingly glamorized weakness and victimhood, often framing them as desirable traits or sources of pride. The victim mentality encourages individuals to identify themselves primarily by their struggles, casting them as powerless and helpless in the face of life's challenges. While it is essential to acknowledge and address real suffering, the danger lies in adopting a victim identity as the defining feature of one's existence. When we allow ourselves to be defined by our pain or perceived injustice, we lose the ability to take responsibility for our own healing and growth. This culture of weakness can be detrimental to emotional and psychological well-being. When individuals view themselves as victims, they often feel justified in their emotional neediness. They believe that their pain is a result of external circumstances, which they cannot control or change. This mindset fosters a sense of helplessness, making it difficult to break free from unhealthy patterns of dependency. Instead of empowering themselves to heal, individuals become trapped in a cycle of emotional and mental disempowerment, constantly seeking validation or sympathy from others. A key element of overcoming the victim identity is embracing modesty, dignity, and character. When we take responsibility for our emotions and actions, we regain the power to shape our own lives. This requires us to reject the notion that we are helpless or at the mercy of external forces. Instead, we must adopt a mindset that focuses on resilience and personal growth, understanding that challenges are not burdens to be avoided, but opportunities to develop strength and wisdom. By rejecting the victim mentality, we begin to reclaim our autonomy and take ownership of our emotional well-being. The shift from victimhood to empowerment is not easy, and it requires significant effort. However, it is essential for emotional independence and personal fulfillment. By recognizing and confronting our weaknesses, we can learn to transform them into strengths. This process involves cultivating self-awareness, emotional control, and resilience, qualities that allow us to navigate life's challenges with dignity and grace. When we take responsibility for our own emotional health, we no longer need to seek external validation to feel worthy or loved. Loss of self in relationships. In relationships, it's easy to lose sight of one's own identity, especially when emotional neediness becomes the central driving force. When individuals become overly dependent on their partners for validation, affection, or emotional support, they risk losing themselves in the process. The relationship becomes a means to fulfill personal desires and insecurities, rather than a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. This loss of self can lead to emotional erosion, where one's sense of individuality and personal goals are gradually sacrificed in favor of the relationship's demands. The danger of living through another person is that it creates an unhealthy dynamic where one partner assumes the role of the emotional caretaker, while the other loses their sense of autonomy. This can lead to codependency, where both individuals rely on each other to fulfill their emotional needs. In these relationships, the lines between personal identity and the shared bond become blurred, causing frustration, resentment, and a deep sense of unfulfillment. Without maintaining a sense of self, individuals may feel trapped in relationships that are more about survival than genuine connection. Maintaining individuality within relationships is crucial for emotional health and balance. It is possible to be deeply connected with someone while still retaining a strong sense of self. This requires self-awareness and a commitment to personal growth, ensuring that one's own needs, values, and goals are respected. Relationships should be a space for mutual support and growth, not a means to escape from personal challenges or emotional pain. By cultivating emotional independence, individuals can enter relationships as whole, fulfilled beings, rather than relying on the relationship to fill the gaps in their own lives. The concept of healthy boundaries plays a critical role in preventing the loss of self. Boundaries are not about pushing others away, but about maintaining a healthy balance between connection and autonomy. When we set clear emotional boundaries, we create space for both individuals to flourish without becoming entangled in one another's emotional world. This allows for deeper intimacy and stronger connections, as both partners are free to express themselves fully and authentically. In the next section, we will explore the balance between past analysis and future synthesis, focusing on how to understand and learn from trauma without becoming imprisoned by it. This process is key to overcoming emotional dependency and cultivating a forward-focused mindset. The balance between past analysis and future synthesis. Understanding trauma and emotional wounds is an important part of healing, but it's equally important not to become imprisoned by them. Analyzing the past is necessary to understand where we've come from, what we've endured, and how those experiences have shaped us. However, if we focus solely on past traumas without integrating them into our future growth, we risk becoming stuck in a cycle of regret, pain, and emotional stagnation. The key lies in balancing past analysis with future synthesis, learning from our experiences without allowing them to define our future. The process of synthesis involves taking the lessons from the past and using them to inform and shape the future. It requires us to acknowledge the pain, but not be controlled by it. This mindset allows us to move forward with strength, resilience, and a sense of purpose. By synthesizing our past experiences, we create a future that is not dictated by old wounds, but instead shaped by our capacity for growth, wisdom, and emotional intelligence. We learn from our mistakes and triumphs, but we also recognize that we are not bound by them. This future-oriented mindset is essential for overcoming emotional dependency. When we focus on the future, we empower ourselves to take action toward healing and personal fulfillment. Instead of allowing past emotional struggles to hold us back, we begin to see them as catalysts for change and growth. The trauma we've experienced can become a source of strength, as long as we view it as part of our journey, not the entirety of our story. This shift in perspective is what allows us to break free from emotional neediness and create a future where we are no longer dependent on others for validation. In practical terms, this means setting future goals, focusing on personal development, and working toward emotional independence. It's about creating a vision for the future that is not tied to past emotional wounds, but is instead rooted in the possibilities of what we can achieve. This future-oriented focus shifts our energy from what we can't change to what we can still create. It gives us hope, purpose, and emotional strength to keep moving forward. Progressive erosion of the will. One of the most insidious effects of unaddressed emotional neediness is the gradual erosion of the will. When emotional dependency is left unchecked, the individual's sense of purpose and drive begins to diminish. This happens because emotional neediness often leads to a reactive rather than proactive approach to life. Instead of taking initiative and striving for personal growth, the person becomes focused on seeking validation or approval from others. This shift in focus weakens the will, as it redirects energy away from self-improvement and toward a constant need for external affirmation. As the will erodes, so does the capacity for self-motivation. The person begins to lose their internal drive to pursue their goals, as they feel that their worth is dependent on the validation they receive from others. This dependency creates a cycle where the individual feels emotionally depleted, unable to make decisions or take decisive action without the approval of someone else. Over time, This eroded will lead to stagnation and a lack of personal fulfillment. Without the strength to pursue their passions or make independent choices, the person becomes trapped in a cycle of emotional and psychological decline. The key to preventing this erosion is cultivating emotional independence. When we learn to meet our emotional needs within ourselves, we restore our sense of willpower and motivation. We begin to act not based on the need for validation, but on a genuine desire for self-improvement and personal growth. This requires developing self-awareness and a commitment to living authentically, without relying on others to define our worth or direct our actions. The more we strengthen our emotional resilience and self-trust, the more we can regain control of our will and begin to take proactive steps toward the life we desire. In practical terms, this means practicing self-care and setting personal boundaries that protect our emotional energy. By focusing on our own emotional well-being and working toward our goals with determination, we build the strength of character needed to overcome emotional dependency. This process is not instantaneous, but requires consistent effort and mental discipline. As we regain our willpower, we begin to see life not as a series of obstacles to be overcome with external help, but as a journey that we navigate with strength and purpose. Excessive affection as a source of neediness. Excessive affection can sometimes be more harmful than a lack of affection, particularly when it becomes a means to fulfill emotional neediness. While affection is a fundamental part of human connection, when it is overgiven or overly demanded, it can create dependency rather than intimacy. In relationships where affection is excessive, one person may become overwhelmed by the constant need to give or receive love, leading to an imbalance. This creates a dynamic where love is no longer freely given, but becomes a way to secure emotional stability or avoid feelings of emptiness. This overabundance of affection can cloud the boundaries between healthy giving and unhealthy dependence. When affection is excessive, it often comes with expectations. The person receiving the affection may feel obligated to reciprocate or may start to rely on the affection as a source of self-worth. This can lead to a situation where the recipient becomes emotionally dependent on the giver, not because the affection is truly fulfilling, but because it is being used to mask deeper emotional gaps. Over time, this dynamic leads to frustration, as the emotional needs of one or both individuals go unmet, despite the outward appearance of affection. Stoic philosophy provides valuable insight into this issue, with its famous advice, nothing in excess. This principle can be applied to affection as well. When given in excess, affection loses its purity and becomes a tool for emotional control. A healthy balance of affection, where both parties give and receive in equal measure, is crucial for emotional well-being. Excessive affection distorts this balance and turns love into a transaction, rather than a natural expression of care and connection. Moreover, excessive affection can prevent individuals from learning how to meet their own emotional needs. When affection is constantly given to soothe emotional discomfort, individuals may never develop the internal resources to cope with their own feelings. This leads to a dependency on external sources of love, creating a cycle of neediness that is difficult to break. The solution is to cultivate emotional independence, where affection is shared freely but not demanded or relied upon as the sole source of emotional fulfillment. As we move forward, we will explore how needy people can take hostages in relationships, creating manipulative or toxic dynamics in an attempt to secure emotional fulfillment. We'll examine how emotional dependency can create unhealthy power structures within relationships and how to break free from them. Needy people take hostages. Emotional dependency can lead to manipulative or toxic behaviors in relationships, where individuals begin to take hostages to secure their emotional needs. This dynamic occurs when a person uses emotional manipulation to ensure that others continue to provide them with the affection or validation they crave. Rather than fostering healthy, reciprocal relationships, the needy person creates a power imbalance, where their emotional survival becomes dependent on the other person's compliance. This can take many forms, such as guilt tripping, emotional blackmail, or creating situations where the other person feels responsible for their happiness. In these situations, the needy individual may not even realize the extent to which they are emotionally holding hostage the other person. They may convince themselves that their need for love or attention is justified and that the other person should naturally fulfill it. However, this mentality creates a toxic dynamic where one person's emotional needs constantly take precedence over the others. The result is a relationship that is built on dependency rather than mutual respect and genuine affection. Over time, this manipulation can erode the emotional health of both individuals, leading to resentment and a breakdown in communication. The key to breaking free from this dynamic is to develop emotional independence and self-sufficiency. This means learning to meet one's own emotional needs and not relying on others to provide constant validation or attention. Healthy relationships are based on a balance of giving and receiving, where both parties feel free to express their emotions without the fear of manipulation or coercion. When individuals can provide emotional support to themselves, they are less likely to create unhealthy dependencies in their relationships. Furthermore, the willingness to let go of emotional control and manipulation opens up space for healthier, more authentic connections. True love and connection can only exist when both individuals are emotionally independent, able to support each other without the expectation of fulfillment from the relationship alone. By breaking free from the need to take hostages, individuals can foster relationships that are based on mutual respect, trust, and emotional maturity. As we continue, we will explore the danger of fantasies and unworthy choices in relationships. We'll look at how the desire for affection can lead people to settle for unhealthy relationships and how to avoid these pitfalls by cultivating a healthy sense of self-worth. Danger of fantasies and unworthy choices. When emotional neediness dominates, it often leads individuals to create fantasies about relationships and partners that are far from reality. These fantasies arise from an internal longing for connection, fulfillment, and love, but they are built on distorted perceptions rather than true understanding. In these cases, individuals may idealize a partner or relationship, projecting onto them qualities that aren't actually present. This creates an illusion of perfection, where the emotional needs of the individual are momentarily satisfied, only to be followed by disappointment when the reality doesn't measure up to the fantasy. These unrealistic expectations set the stage for unworthy choices, where individuals settle for relationships that are unhealthy or unfulfilling. The danger of living in a fantasy world is that it distorts our perception of love and relationships. We may overlook red flags or dismiss unhealthy behavior, believing that our idealized vision of the person or relationship will eventually come true. This is especially true in cases where a person is emotionally desperate or lonely, and the need for affection clouds their judgment. They might settle for a partner who is emotionally unavailable, abusive, or otherwise unworthy, simply because they are fulfilling a need for affection that they are unwilling or unable to meet themselves. The solution to this fantasy-driven cycle is to develop emotional self-awareness and a realistic understanding of love. Rather than searching for the perfect partner or ideal relationship, individuals need to cultivate a strong sense of self-love and personal fulfillment. When we learn to meet our emotional needs independently, we no longer feel compelled to project unrealistic expectations onto others. This allows us to make healthier relationship choices based on mutual respect, compatibility, and emotional maturity. Furthermore, living in fantasy prevents individuals from dealing with the real issues in their relationships. By focusing on an idealized version of the relationship or partner, they avoid addressing the emotional work that is required for true connection. Instead of working through challenges or communicating openly, they retreat into their fantasy, hoping that things will magically improve. This creates a cycle of avoidance and dissatisfaction, where the person is never fully present in the relationship, but instead focused on an unattainable vision. Distinction between solitude and isolation. Solitude and isolation are often confused, but they are fundamentally different experiences. Solitude is a healthy, intentional state in which individuals retreat from the distractions of the outside world to reconnect with themselves. It is in solitude that we cultivate self-awareness, engage in introspection, and tap into our inner strength. Solitude provides a space for personal growth and emotional clarity, allowing us to process our feelings, set goals, and realign with our purpose. This time alone is not about running away from others or the world, but about finding peace within ourselves. It is an essential practice for overcoming emotional neediness, as it helps individuals to develop emotional independence and self-love. In contrast, isolation is a form of emotional withdrawal where individuals disconnect from others due to fear, shame, or emotional pain. Isolation is driven by the desire to escape from the discomfort of dealing with emotions or confronting challenges. When we isolate ourselves, we cut off the possibility of connection and support from others, reinforcing feelings of loneliness and despair. Unlike solitude, isolation exacerbates emotional neediness because it prevents us from nurturing healthy relationships and receiving the emotional support we need. It is a form of avoidance that often leaves us feeling empty, disconnected, and emotionally drained. The key to overcoming emotional neediness is to embrace solitude without slipping into isolation. Healthy solitude allows us to recharge and reflect, but it should not be used as an excuse to withdraw from the world or avoid dealing with our emotions. Solitude becomes a tool for personal empowerment when we use it to strengthen our emotional resilience and develop a deeper sense of self-awareness. It helps us build the emotional resources we need to engage in healthy, fulfilling relationships without becoming overly dependent on others for validation or support. Moreover, the practice of solitude allows us to develop the ability to be emotionally self-sufficient. When we are comfortable being alone with ourselves, we no longer rely on others to fill the emotional void. We learn to love ourselves in solitude, which in turn improves the quality of our relationships when we choose to engage with others. This shift from isolation to solitude transforms our emotional landscape, making us less susceptible to the traps of neediness and dependency. Antidotes to neediness. The antidotes to neediness lie in cultivating a deep sense of self-awareness, emotional independence, and a mindset focused on personal growth. To overcome emotional dependency, it is essential to know, respect, and fulfill yourself. This means developing the ability to meet your emotional needs without relying on others for validation. Self-awareness is the first step in this process. When we understand our emotional triggers, our patterns of neediness, and our true desires, we can begin to break free from the cycle of dependency and build a healthier relationship with ourselves. Healthy solitude plays a crucial role in this transformation. Taking time for introspection and self-reflection allows us to reconnect with our true selves and strengthen our emotional resilience. During moments of solitude, we can practice self-love and engage in activities that nurture our emotional well-being. Whether it's journaling, meditating, or simply taking time to relax, solitude provides the space needed to heal and recharge. This time alone is not about withdrawing from the world, but about building a strong foundation within, so we can interact with others from a place of emotional strength. Distributing love in all directions is another powerful antidote to neediness. Rather than focusing all of our emotional energy on one person or relationship, we can share love and affection with a wide range of people: friends, family, co-workers, or even strangers. This practice fosters a sense of connection and community, reducing the pressure on any one relationship to fulfill all of our emotional needs. By spreading love in many directions, we create a balanced emotional life that isn't dependent on one source of validation. Generosity and empathy are also essential in overcoming neediness. When we focus on giving rather than receiving, We shift our focus from our own unmet desires to the needs of others. This creates a sense of fulfillment and purpose as we recognize that our emotional well-being is not solely dependent on others' attention or approval. Generosity isn't just about material gifts. It can be about offering emotional support, kindness, and understanding. Empathy helps us connect with others on a deeper level, fostering healthy and fulfilling relationships built on mutual respect and care. Finally, overcoming imaginary limits through disciplined action is key to emotional independence. Often, our neediness is rooted in limiting beliefs about ourselves and our worth. By challenging these beliefs and taking proactive steps towards self-improvement, we begin to break free from the constraints of emotional dependency. This requires mental discipline and the courage to step outside of our comfort zones. As we push through these imaginary limits, we expand our emotional capacity and develop the resilience needed to maintain healthy, balanced relationships. So, after all we've explored today, ask yourself, are you giving love freely, or are you waiting for others to fill a void within you? Emotional neediness doesn't just come from a lack of affection. It often stems from a lack of self-awareness, self-love, and emotional independence. It's time to change the narrative. You don't need to rely on others for validation to feel worthy or loved. The power to create healthy, balanced relationships lies within you. If you're ready to break free from the cycle of emotional dependence and embrace a life of emotional independence, start today. Practice healthy solitude, nurture your inner life, and let go of unrealistic expectations. Cultivate generosity and empathy, and let love flow freely in all directions. The more you invest in yourself, the more you'll be able to offer to others. So, what steps will you take today to transform your emotional landscape? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how you plan to overcome emotional neediness and embrace true love. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss more content on how to build healthier, more fulfilling relationships.